4, and then your password.
I can have a separate password. There's no number. What's that password?
A separate password.
I don't have a separate password.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I want to start now because we are already half an hour late. That was planned. I planned half an hour late. And now we're a few minutes beyond the half hour, so I don't want to take up too much time. I would try to see if we can finish at 4, as we had planned initially, but that may not be possible because you people like to talk a lot.
That's Karen.
That's Karen. Okay. Yes. You're helping. They're helping Dr. Paul get online.
I'm good.
That's how we get her to be quiet. All right. Turn everything off.
Oh, you didn't change.
Okay, so we'll start with, yes, I'm on the right thing, okay. Okay, well, okay, as I said, good afternoon and welcome to this first Train the Trainer program for educators. And I am hoping, well, I like my programs, my courses or workshops to be both educational and fun, and sometimes funny, but I want you to enjoy it. I have tried to ensure that the amount of work you have to do would not be seen as too excessive, because I do understand and appreciate that everybody has a lot of other competing activities that are probably equally important. So I wanted to get the best out of this, but I will try to minimize how much work you have to actually do. So you will see how I attempted to do that in a little while. I had planned the session to do the overview of the program initially, because I am a believer in context. You have to have this sort of whole. Not everybody is a learner like that, but I tend to be field dependent. I have to know the whole thing before I could get into the details, right? Yeah, and I have some people who are like that. All right. So this program consists of 3 courses. I think the second course we do is perhaps the most relevant to your practice of training. And that is where you actually do the development of your training plans and executing your training plans. That is the meat and body of this program. So we are easing you into that by doing the first course, which is to prepare you to do that effectively. So at the end of this program, I'm expecting that you would have skills to, as a trainer. And I would like you to think, when you are doing your reflection and so on, to really think of what you have learned, what you have reviewed, what you have revised. You know, you're all educators, so you do come with knowledge, which you'll probably want to update, explore a little bit further or more deeply, right? So the theory, I know you are familiar with, so we started in a place in which you are very familiar, and then we will get into other areas that you may or may not know so well. All right, so the first course is preparations for effective. Roger, you have to sit on this side?
Sorry?
I thought I saw your.
Well, I'm right here.
Oh, you're from it.
I can move it.
Somebody put it in the back.
You want me to move it? Yeah, I can move it.
Yes. So it's about how you prepare for training. And I want to ask you a question before I get into that. Do you make a distinction between training and education? Alright, think. So I want you to think and write. You see you have 2 little cards next to on your desk. Think about it a second and see if you come up with a distinction, any differences and similarities between training and education. I also want to say that this whole program, all of the courses, you are encouraged to ask questions. This is how you will learn. I am not saying that I'll be able to provide answers, but asking the questions and perhaps letting your colleagues come up with some suggestions and answers would be important. Yes,
I'm picking up this one. Can I make my notes on paper?
you could make it on the computer. Okay, no. No. This is just for people who are still in the I need to write it down stage. Right, you only have a minute or 2 to look at that. Okay, you finished? All right, now when you've written down what you've done, just turn to your neighbor and ask them, find out what they wrote, what they say is the distinction between education and training. So yes, Susan, you will talk with me about. Daisy, you have to talk to Jennifer. Well, Jennifer, Daisy is busy, so talk to Lima and Leonie. Alvina, you'll have to talk to Karen. Yes. Roger, you'll have to talk to Nicole. Right, Nicole. Jennifer, when Deborah moves, you have to come and sit next to and the distinction between them. And also,
This is
So one is supposed to result in the other, but it always.
Yes.
Yeah, they're comfortable.
Okay, what conclusions or what pathway did your discussion lead down to or lead to or lead up to?
Well, in fact, seeing as I was not supposed to be here.
You train on intuition.
I initially thought that for me, I perceived no difference between training and education, but I was taught by my colleague that training is simply the provision of knowledge, and education is really about learning how to use information in different situations of life. So
I agree.
I have always perceived that if I'm attending training, I expect that some application will be there. So I guess there's a distinction, at least if that is currently accepted.
What do you think, Mika? Yes, what
We
do you
actually did it the opposite way. We talked about the training aspect being that application and transfer of knowledge. So like allowing people to learn how to not just learn information, but how do they use it after transfer. And then education was broader, just kind of acquiring knowledge and concepts and skills.
And one of the things we said is that training is a part of education. So it seems like training is a little bit more
Is a subset.
specific, whereas education is broader.
All right, so let's get on the side of the room. Yes,
I was
Emma?
thinking something similar to what they were saying. I was thinking that as a trainer, you're passing on information that you already have previous knowledge of as a trainer. Or the learner in that case should already be recognizing the information, whereas the learner in an education scenario may be new information that they come up.
Everything may be completely new.
Yeah.
All right. Siobhan and they made a very important point where they, in training, it tends to be a lot more focused, focusing on particular skills and so on, usually acquired in a very targeted way over a shorter period of time. Education tends to be broader. And yes, you may be well educated, but you may not be able to do anything. You can talk about doing things, but in terms of actually doing it, that is something else. So you usually find that there is a supportive relationship between education and training. So we would want to keep that at the back of our minds.
But
Yes?
isn't education a higher thing, in the sense that if you are educated, which means that I've acquired the information, like kind of inculcated in my head.
In a theoretical way, yeah.
But for me to be educated, I have to know about it, and generally education is a combination of your training, but your applied knowledge from everything else.
So you're saying training is a subset of
It
education?
is, yeah, but I don't just see it as, okay, if you're educated, that you may not know how to apply. I mean, there are persons who have acquired education, but acquired training and certification, but they don't necessarily mean that they are educated.
They're trained.
No, they've acquired certification.
Yeah, but they're trained. Usually the certification is
Right, but that doesn't
but
necessarily mean that they are
educated.
educated.
Right, they don't have the broader concept. Yes, Karen?
But does not, it still gets back to how you define it, because like, I am educated about my car. I can explain a differential, I know about a rear and front differential, but please don't put me to go and fix anything in a car because I'm not trained to do it. So I'm educated in automobile, what you may call it, but I'm not trained, so I'm going to go and fix.
Also, so and that's the tension between education and training. Very well, I like your example. Because you can be educated about it, and we do have a lot of educated people around, right? But what are they trained to do specifically? And this is why we have, for instance, we have teacher training. You know, teacher training is a component of that whole education of the individual. All right. So it means that you, and I'm assuming everybody here, you are well certified and you are qualified in terms of education, the philosophy, the techniques, methods of teaching, and so you know a lot of stuff right? Most of you. But have you really developed skill in teaching, using that information to teach others? Alright?
Is
So,
it possible to have you reverse? Like you feel you've developed skill in teaching over the years, but I don't necessarily think I have the whole pedagogy and all of that down.
you know, big words. Alright, yes.
Because I feel like I have been trained as a trainer before, but in a different context,
Yes.
right? And I guess over the years, because I've been teaching now for 9 years, I've learned things on the way, but I was never educated in the education
Right,
part
you
of
don't
it.
know
So I can
it,
teach
yeah.
psychology, and I know psychology and how to teach that. But I don't know.
At least that's your belief. You
Well,
can
yeah.
teach it, right? Okay.
That's
Yes, but you're right, you know, and for some people, teaching is an art. It's something that comes from inside and they do it well. They're exceptional. But for most of us, we have to go through the process, the education process. We have to know about the foundations of teaching and learning, of pedagogy, and understand how people learn and the theories and so, which are some of the things. Because in case you are wondering, why are we going to be looking at the theory of learning, how people learn? Because in training, you are expecting them to learn. It's just that the learning tends to be a lot more targeted and so on. And as I say, we will do that in the second course.
And just approach it from the point where I look at it in terms of informal and formal training, whereas the education takes place in a formal manner in an educational institution.
Oh, you mean the formal education, but you have
Yeah.
informal education as well. You know?
Yeah, I know.
You can pick up a lot of things along the
Training
way.
is more so leaning towards the informal, like we are having, you know, the on-the-job sort of training.
All right, apprenticeship type
Yeah.
training could be as well. So, you know, I will not dare to give you a fixed definition, but as we go through, you should be able to come up with your own conception, and it shouldn't be too far out there. And that is something that will happen throughout the program, because one of the things I firmly believe is that even in training, you cannot be too prescriptive, because people come with various skills, conceptions, attitudes, and so on, which they may employ very well. Alright, so I'm always saying that whenever you're teaching in any kind of teaching environment, you always have to think through what it is you're doing and what is getting you to the outcomes you desire. Right? So there's no one right way to teach or one right way to train, because a lot depends on what the individual brings to the table. Alright? But what I am expecting all along the way is that you will be thinking through and making decisions about what is working for you. Alright? By the same token, I'm not saying you can do anything. You know, we have a way of just anything is anything. No, anything is not anything. It is, however, even if you are coming up with your own creative way of doing things, it must be something that is studied and workable and within the bounds of the conventions of practice. Alright, so that is by way of introduction. So let us see what the course is like. This is training, so everything is in there: coaching, teaching, knowledge, skill, experience, learning and development. So we are going to be looking at elements of all of these. Alright, and we're looking to see, in the first course, we'll be looking to see if we can ground our training in theoretical frameworks. Alright? There's a reason for underpinning theory, and again, it's because although you may be very creative and want to do things, or you may be intuitive and have a natural flair for training or teaching, it is important to know what the conventions and theories of practice are. So that is what we will be looking at in the first course. Overall, the program, oh, you're supposed to put it on before it could work, right? Oh, there's something in this thing. It probably has the. Oh, before I go on, a lot, well, we'll see it in a little while, but this program is going to be both face-to-face and online. It's a blended program. And each course will have that structure. So I am anticipating that we will have 2 face-to-face days for the 2 3-credit courses, the first and the last, and 3 face-to-face days for the one that I tell you is really critical, the planning course. But I'm expecting that you would go online and see what the activities are. I'm not going to try and fill it up, with too much, because as I say, I do appreciate that everybody is busy. But what I'm trying to do, or what I've tried to do, is to lay it out in a way in which the goals we have defined can be achieved. And the goal here is to equip potential trainers with knowledge about adult learners and how this knowledge influences the design and implementation of education and training programs. So at the end of this, you're supposed to be able to design your own program for teaching and implement it, of course, in the education arena. And that education could mean education, or it could mean that you are training people that the administrators would do. So there's a reason why Alvinel is here. To develop and implement training plans following the conventions and protocols of knowledge for knowledge and skill development. So I mentioned conventions and protocols, so it seems as if I am saying, but I thought you just tell me you could do anything. Well, yes, you could do anything, but you have to make a distinction between those times and those things you can do where the conventions and protocols don't apply, and those things that you can do without, relating to the conventions and protocols. So let me give you an example of that. Assessments, how we do assessments. You figure you just do a test. You write a test, right? And whatever you write in that test, you write a question, and your question is good. What I want to say is that any form of assessment that you use, you are supposed to use the conventions and protocols of writing the questions. It is particularly so with multiple choice questions, essay questions. People write essay questions, for instance, and say, you give a scenario, and then you have this one-word sentence at the end that says, discuss. That is not a question. So we will come out of things like that, okay, when we do the assessment. Or you write multiple choice, right? And there is no rhyme or reason. You have part of the answer in the STEM. You don't know that there's a STEM and that there are options, and you have to have consistent options for all your questions. You can't have one with 7 options and the next question has 4 options, and I have seen papers like that. So there are conventions that you have to observe, all right? So this is one of the things that we will be looking at. And then your ability to evaluate your. So these relate to the 3 courses. The last one is evaluation, develop and implementing training plans, is the critical course, and this is how we ground our plans. They have to be grounded in something. It's grounded in the knowledge of teaching and learning, and how people learn, how people become more proficient, how they develop skills. And so we look at that in the first course, which will be over the next 3 or 4 weeks. We'll see. I just don't know why this thing is out.
Battery.
It might be the battery, but the battery says full.
No, check, remember it's a remote, so you have to make sure it's in alignment with the, wherever
Oh,
the
this
sensor
thing
is.
might be, okay, I think I hear it, because this thing wasn't working very well.
Might be towards the sensor. Or the laptop.
Yeah, but it's, normally it does it anyway.
Oh, okay.
So probably the batteries need,
You wanna try that?
yeah. I have batteries, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I do. Oh, no. But I have them here.
Just change.
Yeah,
Change
because
back.
yes, I've been. Okay.
Oh,
Okay, there's a battery
Keep it
problem.
Reset.
Yeah.
You just have to reset. Reset.
Alright. Alright, so the outcomes of the, for this program, and by the way, I have this online so you can go and look at it at your leisure. Everything that we do in class, you could go and look at your leisure. There are the additional things, but you'll see it online. You should be able to distinguish adult learner characteristics and principles. Talk about that well and why. Contextualize learning preferences. So we'll see what those are. Distinguish among learning theories and the circumstantial use. Identify principles of good teaching, training. Distinguish, and you see sometimes I use teaching and training interchangeably because some things apply to both teaching and training. Oh, I should say that training tends to be shorter and more targeted. I said that correctly. Distinguish techniques used for training from those used for teaching. So we will see what that is. Demonstrate understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of selected training techniques and methods. Distinguish between evaluation and assessment in training. So that's the kind of knowledge you should come out with. And for skills, you will be able to create conducive learning environments to meet a variety of learning needs. Yeah, that is the knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Because it doesn't matter who you are teaching, you will find that even in a room like this where we have 16 people, 18 people, everybody would have probably very different learning styles and attitudes to learning and so on. How you accommodate that in your teaching plans or training plans is going to be important. Develop teaching training plans and subject matter suited to the target audience. Adopt and adapt learning strategies that they can run. I think this is here one of the most interesting part of teaching and learning. How you adopt or adapt. I really like adapting strategies to suit your own audience, right? So you may see something, you read about it, and you might want to use the technique, but you would have to consider how it will work, what would make it work in your circumstance. You can't imagine that everything that you take from the book or what you see on the net, that it will actually work in your context. You have to know your context and know the specific advantages or disadvantages of using each technique. Plan learning activities and events that effectively further. I want to underscore learning activities. One of the things I must say about training, most times training focuses on skills development. So you actually do stuff, right? You do stuff to become more proficient. So you really focus on what the learners have to do to become proficient. In education, that tends to slip us. In education, we tend to feel that you teaching a course and your conception of teaching is that you will stand in front of your audience, the fount of knowledge, and expatiate. And expatiate is a word, look it up. Yeah. You expatiate and it's going all one way. My thing for that is, then you might as well be a radio. Because unfortunately when people are listening to you, they can't overtly turn you off. They do it subconsciously. Alright, but they can't overtly turn you off. But the radio, at least you can turn it off when you stop listening. Right? So it's not just about disseminating information. And this is one of the things that we've been working on in the last few decades, trying to ensure that learning is about what the learners can do to acquire the information and to use it. All right? So it's not just dissemination of information, but it's about facilitating learning. And that's the crux of teaching. It's probably the most challenging part of teaching. But who wants to teach if you don't have a challenge, right? Nika? All right. And let's structure evaluation and assessments to measure and monitor. And the interesting thing about evaluation of training is that, you know, when most training takes place in a workshop style setting, and for this little period, 3 hours or so, you might get a little food in between. In our case, it will simply be liquid food in the form of coffee and water, right? Which Colin prepared out for you all out there. So that's something that, yeah, so you tend to feel good, and the delivery, you usually involve, you have to do something. So you usually involve, so you feel very good at the end of it. And you would have thought that you learned a lot. And generally at the end of that, you have what are called happy sheets. Everybody will give the workshop presenter marks, high marks, because you're feeling good. But is that what we want at the end of the day? It can't be all that we want. Yes, you want people to feel good, but you also want them to take away skills. And more importantly, apply them in their own setting, in the work setting. So that's when we, and how would we know whether what you have done with them in the training that they have taken and they're using that in their actual work? So you have to get feedback. This is where the evaluation is, and how we organize for feedback is going to be important. And it may be one of the things that we know too is that after 6 weeks after people have done some training, they probably still have some euphoria from doing the training. So you might find that they're interested in, you know, doing some stuff. And 3 months later, when it has receded into the background and things come upon them, you would find that they start trying to figure out whatever did they learn in that workshop. Right? I would do a lot of workshops when I was at UB, and one of the things, when people come back to the workshop and say, you know, we learned so much, but when I get back to my classes, right, there is so much work to do that I can't implement, you know, what I've learned. I say, so then why are you coming back? Because what you are telling me is that you will come here, spend these 3 hours, learn something that you find is very useful theoretically. So theoretically, it's all nice and good. And then when you go back to your department, it's business as usual. Right? And there are many reasons why one is overload, one is the culture of a department. If you are in a department, for instance, where, and this used to happen all the time, especially in the earlier days of my department, if one lecturer comes to a workshop and learns something that they want to